The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. Howdy ho, everybody. Come to you cordless from Northeast Minneapolis. It's Tuesday night, May 13th, 2025. I am Jim Peters. Welcome to another edition of Jim Peters at Night. This is episode number 227 if you're keeping score at home, and I hope you are. Our guest tonight is Dennis Kneale. He's a former anchor of CNBC and Fox Business Network, and he has a new book out called Jesus, Jim, are you going to screw this up? He has a new book out called The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. It's kind of sort of a biography, but it's more like an analysis of why and how Musk is successful. And I read it. It's fantastic. And we'll put a link up to it on our blog, and you should buy it and read it too. I didn't mention this to Dennis. Kindle is a wonderful thing. I mean, and that's, we'll get into that, but too many people are bashing too many billionaires. I started on the web when Jeff Bezos started Amazon, which was, I know you might not believe this, it was July 1994. They didn't sell any books for 2 years, but that's actually when he started the company. And you could, in some ways, if you're a student of marketing, you can make the argument that he did everything wrong. And yet, with one single exception, the only thing I know that they've actually failed at royally was the Fire phone, the cell phone they put out, which was a complete disaster. Other than that, he's been right about everything. So, and I think you'll get the impression about Elon Musk too when we talk to Dennis here in a few minutes. So he's our guest tonight. Tomorrow night, our old friend Tim Conaway, the former executive editor of Hustler magazine, is coming on. And I tease him about this constantly, about the fact that he got to pick the pictures of the beaver hunt. But it just occurred to me, I got to ask him, did he think of the beaver hunt, or was that Larry Flint's idea? We got to ask him tomorrow. I've never actually asked him that. But anyway, we'll talk about journalism, conservative politics, all that sort of stuff. He's always a good time. On Thursday, we have climatologist Matthew Willicke coming on. And I like Matthew because he's a real straight shooter. Now, my position here has been that everyone recognizes that global warming is real. The world is warming up. But my impression, based on what I know about the science, is that humans are only playing a minor role in that. Now, the best I can gather here, and of course he can elaborate on this, he takes a kind of a halfway position to me. He thinks that humans are making a bigger contribution to this, but still not the major one. So anyway, I'm looking forward to having him on too. On Monday, Don Zero, intelligence operative and lover of women, our old friend, he's coming on. He's always a good time. I know his shows always get a lot of viewership, so I know you guys like him. He's a very interesting guy. On Tuesday, AJ Rice, the conservative publicist and author, is coming on here. And if you don't recognize AJ's name, well, AJ is the publicist for pretty much every important person in conservative media and politics in the United States. I mean, he's the rainmaker. I don't know how he does it. We're going to want to ask him that too. How do you corral all these people? But I will, at the beginning of our interview on Tuesday, I will read off a partial list of his clients, and your mind will be blown. It will. Wednesday, Marianne Heinen, she wrote a book called Operation George Floyd, and she is under one of the people, quite a few people have come out with books now about the fact that the whole George Floyd murder by Dennis Chauvin here in Minneapolis was a complete scam, and it was. Dennis Chauvin did not kill George Floyd. He might have contributed to his death, but he did not kill him. And and she's one of the many people now, not many, a few, who have written books on that very subject. So we're looking forward to talking to her. We may or may not have a show next Thursday. That's a week from tomorrow. That's the 22nd. I'm kind of waiting to book a guest, and we'll find out. And if not, if we don't have a guest, I think I'm going to can it because I got a lot of work to do. Because I'll tell you about that in just a second. We're taking Memorial Day off. Tuesday, the 27th, the day after Memorial Day, Jonathan Lockwood, who's been on the show once before now, and he's going to be a regular. He's the former colonel, Army colonel, and he's on to talk about mostly military and political matters, mostly the wars in Ukraine and in India, Pakistan, which looks like, at least for the time being, has been kind of sort of solved. We'll see. But anyway, he's coming on to talk about that. And we don't have any. On the day after that, we're taking off too. And that Thursday, that would be the 29th, the last day of the month, Larry Newman comes on, Bigfoot hunter extraordinaire. And the reason I want to take some time off to do some extra work is because starting tomorrow, we will be on TikTok, believe it or not. Now, the show isn't going to be on TikTok. We're going to be posting shorts on TikTok. We're probably going to post 2 to 4 shorts from every show we do on TikTok, and we're also going to post them on YouTube, but TikTok's a big deal. What I want to do here is starting next month sometime, hopefully before the 4th of July, and maybe just after that too, we'll see. On Friday nights, we might do a specific TikTok show, a show just on TikTok. And of course, it's really easy to call in on TikTok because basically, if you're watching, you can, pardon me. The chat there is totally interactive and it's included. It's basically built into the video feed, so it's not separate. So, but you can actually call in too with your camera. You can take calls. It's very simple. And so we might on Fridays, selected Fridays anyway, do a specific TikTok show. But anyway, tomorrow you can look for we're at Jim at Night on TikTok, same as we are everywhere. I'm also hoping now to get our Facebook page back up and running because they banned it. So, but it's been quite a while. It's been, I think, over a year since that happened. So I'm kind of hoping, especially because we have tweaked the format of the show a little bit. It's not quite as political as it was before. And we still talk about politics, but still, it's like now kind of more general interview thing. So I'm trying to see if we can get back on Facebook too. We'll see. So I got a lot of work to do. And so what else is new? Am I bitching? Yes. Because I'm old. Okay. So we got a commercial from Calling News coming up, and then we're going to talk to Dennis Kneale. Stay tuned, everybody. Hi, all. Jim Peters again for Calling News. Let me tell you one of the greatest things about Calling News. It's free. It's completely and totally free. You don't need to register. You don't need to log in, subscribe, none of that stuff. Sure, they run a few ads on the front page, but if you're an old fogey like me, you might actually appreciate this because when you check out Calling News at Conk.com, you'll probably notice that it's the closest thing to an old-fashioned hard copy newspaper that you'll find online. The latest up-to-the-minute news from 75 high-quality sources collected every 3 hours, all laid out with photos and headlines directly from the articles. And when you click on a story, you go directly to that story. No ad page, no interstitial page, none of that stuff. This is the way online news is meant to be. And did I mention that it's completely free? Seriously, how much of the stuff in America is free now, right? That's of quality anyway. So check this out for yourself. It's at conk.com, CONK.com, Conk News. Joining us from his home in Brooklyn, New York, Dennis Kneale, former CNBC anchor and anchor of Fox Business Network and author of The Leadership. I'm not going to screw this up, Dennis. What the hell's wrong with me? The Leadership Genius
of Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk to you, Jim. I like your show here, man. You got some great graphics and good music. I mean, it's just there's an amazing revolution going on here, and you know, one of the 11 lessons of Elon in my book is lesson 6, and it says that free speech is everything. Stand up and make yourself heard. And that's what you're doing with your show. Exactly that. And not enough people in America stand up and made themselves heard as our country was slowly going crazy and down the wrong direction.
Yeah, and that's actually, that leads to my very first question here I got for you, Dennis, because and it's not really based on your book. And I find this just amazing. This was in Breitbart just a couple days ago about the fact that 80% of Democrats in America say they want Elon Musk in prison. What the hell? What is that about? How can
That's about brainwashing, isn't it? That's about dimwit Democrats and their lapdog media allies going all in on Elon Musk is terrible for only one reason, because he allied with Donald Trump. There's such Trump derangement syndrome, right? That a guy, Elon, who's arguably doing more on more fronts to save the world or make it a better place than any innovator of the last century, perhaps. But now he's public enemy number one. I wonder if they planned it, Trump and Musk, for Musk to become the lightning rod. I wonder if Donald Trump misses some of the lightning.
Well, it seems to me it's become increasingly obvious that people talk about Trump playing 4D chess, and I'm starting to think he actually is. I think he thinks some of these things way ahead of time,
Yeah. I sometimes wonder whether in his second term, Trump has been convinced by Elon Musk that there's a possibility, and this is lesson 1 of the 11 lessons in my book. Lesson 1 says, hey, all of this may be fake, so just go for it. Elon believes somewhere along the line that there's a possibility that this could be one massive video game simulation. And in that case, you might as well just swing for the fences. And look at Trump in his second term, man. He's just going for it. He's not afraid of anything.
No,
it's as if he knows this all may be a game anyway, so I'm just going to play it to the hilt.
Well, since you brought that up, let's just go with that right away. That's not that there's more people that hold that scientific opinion than most people know. And I've had several of them on the show. We've talked about this, about the fact that life our entire universe may be someone else's simulation.
And the thing is, the more I researched it, Jim, and the deeper I went into it, and then I interviewed this physicist for like an hour and a half on Zoom because he thinks he may have found some evidence in nature that lend itself to this. The more fascinated I became, the more I began to think that it was entirely possible. And I'll give you a quick little math thing if you have time for it. Can I say it?
We're interviewing you. You're talking. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. I'm used to doing the interviewing usually. All right. So the universe is 13.8 billion years old. So that means that there are almost 1.4 million stretches of 10,000 years. Now, certainly we would believe that 10,000 years from now, they could do a simulation that's so real that we don't know the difference, that we don't realize it's not real. 10,000 years from now, certainly. Well, the thought that in 1.4 million spans of 10,000 years, we've never gotten there yet, that only now, 10,000 years from now, will it happen? No way. It's had to have happened by now someplace. And if it has, who knows? Who knows? Maybe we're in it. But what I like is that, because I want these lessons to help us lead a better life, build a better life, or at least feel better about the life we have. And if we were to read up on this and realize the simulation theory is actually quite plausible, if it were true, how would we change our life? Would we love out loud more? Would we be more emotive and tell people how we really feel? Would we put up with a terrible job? Would we take that risky new job that we otherwise would actually reject because we're afraid of failure? I mean, when you start to think that, well, what if this were a game? You start to behave maybe a little more boldly, and you stop living a life of quiet desperation.
Especially fear. Too many people are too afraid of, and most of the stuff people are afraid of never comes to pass,
Yeah, fear is one of the primary currencies in the media economy now. It's constantly fear, fear, fear. Look at all of the tariff coverage. He's upending the world order. My gosh, it's going to lead to inflation. He's betraying our trade customers. And none of that has happened. And it didn't happen in 2016 either when he put in tariffs that Biden left in place. So it's all fear. But what Elon Musk does, he comes along and He's not afraid of failure. He sees failure as a necessary step on the way to success. He's not afraid of criticism, bitter criticism. Lesson 3 says, the highest nail gets pounded down first, so strap on a helmet. Elon says, bring it on. It makes him stronger, not weak. His enemies err by going after him and criticizing him so bitterly. They should turn their back on him and ignore him. That would drive him crazy. Lesson 4, and Elon does this with alacrity, Jim. Lesson 4 says, tease your critics and torture your enemies. Elon is called short sellers who bet against his stock, basically the scum of the earth. He has helped them lose a total net of $60 billion betting against his stock in recent years. He's just utterly tortured them when most CEOs look away and they don't take on the fight. It's time for a lot of us to stop giving in and stop, caving into the slightest controversy. And instead, we got to do what a producer told me when I became anchor of my own show was my dream on CNBC, Jim. 8 o'clock at night, prime time, baby. CNBC reports. They wouldn't change it to The Real Deal with Dennis Kneill, but that's what we called it anyway. And there's no one watching. We got to start a fight in an empty room. I mean, you got to be able to fight. And Trump is teaching us fight, fight, fight. And Elon Musk and Trump coming together was kind of an incredibly entertaining outcome in the simulation. They both share the same enemies. They both are trashed by the same people, and they both are coming together and having an awfully good time.
Well, Dennis, I can't remember if I read this in your book or somebody else's book about the fact that there's one theory that if this is a simulation, that maybe it exists to entertain the people that created it.
Yes.
And therefore they're watching us as basically like TV.
That's why they want entertaining outcomes. Both
right.
A physicist.
Is that in your book? I can't remember.
Yes, it is. Yes. And Boster wrote a seminal paper in 2000 or 2001 on the simulation. And he had these 3 main postulates. And one of them was that, okay, nowhere in the universe have we ever had a simulation, which means there's been no simulation ever got advanced enough. It destroyed itself before it could get there. That's one thing. Or if there were a simulation, they would not create it for boring outcomes. No one would bother doing that. Yeah. And they have calculated, by the way, I love this figure, that it could take about 47 planet Earths of compute power to do a really good simulation. 47 planets, okay? Yeah. And so if that were true, lesson 2 comes in. Reduce, reduce, reduce. There's a physicist, his name's Melvin Vobson, and he's found that across nature, there is this very strange trend toward reducing information. Usually in the universe, entropy, waste, decay, complexity of systems always is on the rise. But that raises a question. Well, the mass of the universe doesn't ever increase. So if there's all this entropy, why is it not increasing? And he comes along and says, because information is decreasing. Information on a disk drive starts to delete itself after 10 years. Butterflies, they all have patterns instead of being utterly random, because that reduces the processing and storage capability needed. So this physicist Vobson wonders, he noted that the COVID vaccine, the COVID virus, it originally had a huge number of characters of DNA, and every new generation, it went down, 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 deleting characters and yet doing the same work. All of nature is reducing, and he wonders, is it because they've got to save on computer storage because it's a simulation?
That's a brilliant theory, because I mean, he's the only person who's come up with a reasonable solution to the fact that, like you said, that entropy in physics.
He coined a new law. In physics, there's the second law of thermodynamics, and it's about heat and never changes form. Energy doesn't disappear. But he called this the second law of information dynamics. And postulated that, wow, information is constantly looking to be the most efficient. And even, this was so weird, even in the formulation of atoms on a plate to form a molecule, they follow a structure that is called Holmes's rules or something. And he computed and found out that all that structure uses up the least storage. It is the most efficient. And without it, there'd be no structure to tables and chairs. Which is quite fascinating.
It is absolutely fascinating. I want to go back to what you were saying about, you know, your lesson about tease your critics and torture enemies.
Yeah.
Now, why would anybody in their right mind bet against this guy? So, and here's the example I'm going to use, which is one of the stupidest things I've heard in years. When AOC, Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, her previous job was she was a bartender. She says, well, you know, Elon Musk really isn't that smart. Meanwhile, he's actually catching rockets. You know, Dennis, when they showed that first time that when they caught that rocket and I'm thinking there, and first of all, it's the very first time they ever did it. It worked on the first try. Now that's actually amazing. And I know you're just like you're talking about the way he thinks. He doesn't mind failing 14 times till we get this right. But they did it on the very first try. And I'm watching that. And I'm thinking that is fucking nuts. And here this woman is saying that, well, you know, he's not very bright.
like she can judge. Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Suburb Sandy. All right. She grew up in a New York suburb. She is not a street, you know, but then when she's talking about, you know, the gang member from El Salvador, and suddenly she's speaking Latina. And, you know, I think she has a crush on him, frankly, because she's, you know, obsessed with him. But for her to come out and say that was just so dumb and so sad. Now, he is socially awkward, right? He has said that he's on the spectrum, that he has Asperger's syndrome or something. Yeah. And he's overly blunt. You know, there's an entire op-ed in the New York Times a few weeks ago by a guy, his name's, I think, Adam Grant or Alexander Grant. He's an organizational psychologist. And he warned us that America's CEOs are learning the wrong lesson from Elon Musk because he yells at people. And for decades, researchers show that if you want to have good productivity, you can't yell at your people. You know what? Shut up, you baby. If someone out there is lucky enough to be working for Elon Musk, one of the most amazing minds in a century, okay, and he yells at you, you can change the way you choose to feel about that being yelled at. You can instead laugh and go home and say, you won't believe what he said to me today, this jerk, this crazy Elon. You can change the way you just choose to feel about it instead of saying, well, he hurt my feelings. People today are just such wimps.
Yes,
shop for umbrage.
Dennis, I'm guessing you and I are about the same age. How did that happen? What the hell happened in society where we become such really just forgive me, pussies?
Yes, which is merely a nickname for being pusillanimous. It turns out it's not a reference to gender or
no reference.
Well, how did that happen? Here, I think I have the answer, and some of my friends, journalists for years, are shocked when I say this. When we started allowing the phrase harmful content to come into our lexicon, when we started deciding that content, mere words on a screen, to leap off the page and smack you in the face and harm you, well, now that's when we have to suddenly start protecting people. We have to muzzle voices that might say hurtful things. Right. Hey, man, whatever happened to sticks and stones will break your bones, but names will never hurt you. And now what we have is a national crisis if someone wants to drop the N-word. I mean, get over it and just ignore it. So that harmful content was the first thing. And then academia, university campuses, and safe spaces. And the word microaggressions. My daughter, I adopted in China. And she's Asian. And so she's a nurse now. I'm very proud of her. Every now and then, she might run into someone who says something racist about her being Asian, okay? And she talked to me once when she was in college about microaggressions. I said, honey, if they have to call them micro, you don't even have to worry about it. Just like dismiss it and ignore it. Instead, we zoom up on the problem, on the offense. A lot of people are failures in their lives. They don't have work as a center, hard work. And so they look for something, they don't have religion. They may not have a romantic relationship. So by golly, they're going to march in favor of the Palestinians, even though it has no impact on their life at all, because they think they're giving their life meaning. But really, they're just miserable and they need to find something to really feel. And it should be working harder and building a better life instead of sitting around bitching about it all day.
Yeah. And, you know, it seems to me, Dennis, that a lot of people don't do. I think people would be way better off emotionally if they did really hard work.
Yes. You know, lesson 5, of my 11 lessons of Elon. Can you tell I like alliteration? Lesson 5 says most people are loafers. Work harder than you ever have before. Now, as soon as we started around that 80s or 90s talking about work-life balance, today, Gen Z, as far as they're concerned, it's all life and almost no work.
Yeah.
This is, and there's amazing stats in this chapter. It turns out that a 25-year-old man today, 15% of them have no connection to the workforce. They haven't had a paycheck in a year. And that's double the portion that it was 20 years ago for 25-year-old men. Then it turns out they only spend 46 minutes more per day on household chores than a man who works full time and then comes home to the house and has to do chores. And they spend less time on family relationships. So what are they doing? Literally playing video games. Researchers believe that better video games, like the simulation within a simulation, are responsible for 75% of this reduction in young men in the workforce. These guys have no meaning to their lives, and they're lost. They're lost.
Dennis, you were talking about what happens in 10,000 years. We're probably only 2 or 3 years away from complete photorealism in video games. I mean, it's 95% there already. I don't know if you've ever gone. I don't play, but I see this stuff just for like my professional curiosity. You get on Grand Theft Auto. I mean, it's almost realistic. Every once in a while, some character does something goofy, but generally, it's like watching a movie. And
now, it's still on a screen yet, and Facebook, Meta, has spent some $30 billion at last count, utterly convinced that we will at some point be surrounded by it in the metaverse. You know, once we get with the goggles, if you can just reduce those to just mere glasses, they just look ridiculous. So far, I think that's getting in the way. Every other technology, every new one just about has been led first by porn, VHS tapes, you know, internet. It's been pushed forward by porn first. And I talked to a guy, he was the head of a, I forget the name of the company now. His name was Steve something. Anyway, a big porn company. And he said, well, 3D porn is just not going to catch on because you just feel ridiculous when you're wearing these stupid goggles. No one's going to want to have sex and look at their woman next to them when they're wearing these stupid goggles. But if you're Mark Zuckerberg, who did not get laid a whole lot when you're in college, this metaverse idea sounds fantastic.
Oh, Dennis, you made me laugh. That's right.
Good. All right. I love that.
That's funny.
I'll be playing here all week, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to try to do that.
But the simulation thing is very real, and or at least the prospect of it. And you're not the only person. I mean, there are people now who are pointing to increasingly like more and more evidence. I mean, no one's. I don't know if it's even within the human realm to prove this because it's so.
Melvin Thompson has heard from people. Okay, when he's come out publicly and talked about a lot of this stuff, he's heard from people, including some prominent actors in Hollywood who don't want to be identified, that say, look, I've seen a glitch in the Matrix.
Yeah.
He heard from someone who said, and he thinks that he has maybe even seen one himself. He's walking and there was a space where someone just kind of glitched and disappeared.
Yeah.
And then another day it happened again. And so that's fascinating because you get right back to the movie The Matrix, right? And that idea of you know, it's pretty. Now, I heard a documentary in my research, and a young guy in his 20s so believed in it that he went and took a shotgun and he shot his mother and father, certain that this was just a game, and he was going to prove that. And he turned out to be terribly wrong. Although,
well, the thing is, I mean, you brought this up. If it is a game, we still have to play by the internal rules.
Right. You don't be jumping from rooftop to rooftop like in the movie, okay? Because that's violating the physics of the universe that has been created. So you got to play by those rules. And yet, this does free Elon to take on massive risks that no one else would take on. See, there's another lesson that says you got to dream huge and be willing to spend decades pursuing it. So the year 2000, a guy interviewed for the book, James Cantrell, I know him anyway, he's a rocket scientist, literally, and he starts specializing in 2000 after the breakup of the Soviet Union, Russia, the best rocket makers in the world, because they were working on nuclear missiles to like kill us. Well, what are we going to do? The U.S. wanted to try to help them become rocket makers. And so they became the best rocket makers in the world. So Elon goes there with Jim Cantrell, and they go there to interview the chief engineer. And he tells him, I want to buy your rockets. I know you're selling for like $2 million a piece. I want to buy a couple. Well, why? I want to go to Mars. And the engineer is so put off by this and offended, he spits on Elon's shoes. Who Elon's not quite sure at first, but then he turns and says, I think he's being disrespectful. And Cantrell says, yeah, that's a sign there that he spit on your shoes, because they thought it was so ridiculous. And yet he's been at it for 20 years, 25 years. He's still going for it. Along the way, look at what he has built toward that huge dream, you see. Even though you're not there yet, look at all the things. There's 7,000 satellites aloft for Starlink that he put up there with his own rockets. It's unheard of. And because the Russians rejected him, they sowed the seeds of their own demise. Today, SpaceX is launching like twice what Moscow is able to launch. I mean, the Russians are nowhere. They're nothing. And the guy that they looked at as this stupid little boy in a T-shirt, and they spit on his shoes, he's the one who was the death knell for their business. It's wonderful.
Yeah, and you mentioned in your book about, and I found this really fascinating because I'm really into science, and we do a lot of science stuff on the show, about the fact that for the Falcon Heavy rocket, he had his scientists go through hybrid carbon fiber materials for the outside.
Super complex, like super advanced.
And then finally he just said, fuck it, stainless steel.
Yeah, he's got this thing called first principles that a lot of developers and engineers know about stripping everything down to its most basic elements. And he realized that a rocket is very little more than stainless steel filled with a whole bunch of fuel. And he came up with an idiot index to try to figure out the multiple of how much more they were charging than they really had to. And it was like a huge, unnecessary markup. And it was because it was government money taking care of it. But, when it's private enterprise, you're going to do it more efficiently because that's your money. That's the other thing is, there's clusters of these rules that work together that can help with career advice. For example, there's, I was writing this down. There's lesson 5 about work harder than you ever have before. Lesson 8 about dream huge and be willing to spend years pursuing it. Lesson 9, bet on yourself and always double down. And then lesson 10, one of the most important ones, it's better to launch and burn than never to launch at all. And that means embrace failure. Starship is the largest machine craft that we've ever, as humans, tried to put into orbit. And Starship is 100 feet taller than the Statue of Liberty on her pedestal. And Starship, before it finally got aloft, required explosion after explosion. It landed sometimes and almost made it and then would tip over. I mean, it's just an amazing piece of machinery that they put up there. And every time they fail, the media come out with headlines jeering at it, explodes. And yet Elon is kind of excited because he's learned thousands of new flaws to fix.
Right.
And if we were all willing to embrace failure more, be willing to fail more, we might take more risk in our life. We might be willing to ask that gal out that we've had a crush on for 3 years at work, but we never dare. Okay. Yeah. We might actually do a lot more because every failure is learning. I once made a speech called Thriving on No, because after I left Fox with 15 minutes notice and they had a security guard escort me out, it was like I slept with the wife of a senior executive or something. And and I've now forgot what my point was because I was so worried about saying something I should have there. So go ahead, you take over.
All right, I will. You delineate in the book fairly clearly about how Musk was the darling of the media until he bought Twitter, and then the whole thing completely changed like 180 degrees.
And you know what? It's going to be interesting whether 10, 20, 30 years from now, historians or 50 years look back and they think of all the things he did, amazing things. He'll get us to Mars, that maybe freeing the X platform might be the biggest impact because free speech is under attack in this country. I did an interview with this Australian financial network, and this guy who he had to move the network to Indonesia because Australia is cracking down on free speech. In the UK, we have people who repost a tweet and they're getting put in jail. They're getting put in jail for things that they said for
Yeah.
words. And this is an ally of ours. And we've had in this country, Biden, Kamala Harris, former Secretary of State Kerry, AOC, Robert Reich, every one of these people, the chairman of NPR, has come out and criticized the First Amendment for allowing free speech. And today, Americans, they don't believe hard enough in free speech. Something like 40% of Americans say they've never posted online because they're afraid of being canceled. All right.
Yeah.
1/3 of Americans in a sample in a poll has been taken for 25 years. Right now, 1/3 of Americans say they think it's more important to prevent hate speech than it is to preserve free speech. They don't know that the First Amendment protects hate speech, protects the worst speech. Okay. They don't even know that. And then another 1/3 of Americans, they're not sure. So we got 2/3 of Americans not realizing that the First Amendment is everything, and it protects movies and TV and expression, and they don't even know. And then 1/3 finally get it. Along comes Elon Musk, and because he became a citizen in 2011, he has the zeal of a convert, and he believes in free speech, and it has literally cost him billions and billions of dollars in net worth and thousands of dollars in a declining Tesla stock price, because I own Tesla stock.
But you talking about the fact that 1/3 of people are against free speech, but they don't even know why. They don't even know why it's necessary.
It's because of harmful content. They're afraid that people are going to be hurt by free speech. You know what? Toughen up.
And then the whole thing becomes a giant circular argument, right? It's terrible. This is the part, and I don't have to tell you this. We are basically the only country in the world that has a First Amendment. And so we're hanging by a thread. And like you said, in Britain, they're already throwing people in jail. In Australia, they're already doing that. I mean, it's hard to, I never thought I'd see this ever in my life.
I have an obscure fact for you that you're going to want to steal and make use of this. When I was researching the First Amendment, because one of the favorite sayings I've always had as a journalist for many years is that, the First Amendment's first for a reason, baby. I mean, it's the most important thing. Well, it turns out originally it was the Third Amendment. But the first two, which were bookkeeping things about how to appoint a state senator, they were rejected by the original 13 colonies and or states. And so the First Amendment was actually the Third Amendment.
I did not know
it ended up being first, and that's kind of fate.
Yeah, it is. I almost get confused here because I don't understand how people cannot understand how this is important. I just don't understand it. And yet we're hanging on by a thread, and we might be the last bastion of humanity that keeps us going, if we can even manage to keep it going. Musk is basically like a canary in the coal mine, because people, like you said, there's people trying to shut this down all over the place in the U.S.
Yes, in the U.S. Let's remember something. All of the other social media platforms remain subject to government censorship. Facebook is cracking down on controversial content, conservative content, all the time, even after Mark Zuckerberg came out and gave a great mea culpa and says that we bowed to the government too readily. All of them did. The X platform, which the media have been predicting the death of. It's like Mark Twain. My God, again and again, he's destroying Twitter. He's breaking Twitter. Character limit. It is by far the most important media and social media platform in the world. It is where world leaders announce news. The New York Times, it no longer gets spoon-fed scoops. Instead, you just go on X, announce it, and the Times is quoting what was said on X. It's an amazing platform, and it's because it's the freest platform. And, I've said this before, and I'm going to repeat it. I personally was writing columns and doing podcasts, and when the Twitter files broke, I wrote more columns than the staffs of the New York Times and the Washington Post combined. They did not cover the Twitter files as the biggest American scandal in history, the biggest most rampant violation of First Amendment rights by government in the history of this country. Thousands of people's voices were censored that millions had the right to hear. And dozens of U.S. government agencies and state agencies were all over social media, the FBI, the CIA, the State Department, all of them. And the reason the media didn't care is because it was conservative voices being censored. But you know what, Jim? The Trump administration in the first term, asked Twitter to censor 5,500 liberal accounts. So maybe the media will care more when liberal voices get censored, which they will do if the Republicans ever take control and can actually get along and get their act together.
Yeah, that is what I have to tell you, you're preaching to the choir here, because this show's been banned on Facebook, and it's
what is that? I mean,
know.
And even if it turns out that you are putting out the most incendiary, terrible stuff, the way to overcome, hateful content or whatever, which this isn't clearly, the way to overcome that is not to muzzle it. It is to come up with more better content and drown it out. And this lack of a willingness to compete and to want instead to control is weak and feckless. And it's because liberals have no spine. They have no foundation to stand on. They have all these ideals, but it's not fact-based opinion. It's not based on results.
Well, your last of the 11 lessons here, this really fascinated me because this kind of touches on me personally. The most ironic outcome is the most likely, know?
And by irony, a lot of people don't know what the word irony means. And, Alanis Morissette said, isn't it ironic? It's like rain on your wedding day. It's a Chardonnay. But it turns out none of those examples are ironic, because ironic means the opposite of what you expected to happen or what you tried to make happen. And this is an amazing rule, because one thing is it fits into the simulation, because you would have ironic, utterly stunning outcomes, because that would be far more entertaining, right? Yeah, for a video game that we're all inside. But look at Trump. Look at how many trials, 4 different criminal cases thrown at him. Every leader on the other side saying he's a Nazi and he's going to end elections. All these people conspiring against him to stop him from being elected. And he won. It is the most unlikely outcome. And I mean, if there's example after example, look at OpenAI. Elon Musk funded the first $50 million of that company, which now is worth like $150 billion. He would own 30% of it, another 50, what the heck. But he didn't own a thing of it. He just wanted to give this AI away to the world, because he feared that Microsoft and Google had hired 2/3 of the world's best AI scientists. And the head of Google, Larry Page, really doesn't care if AI gets out of control and endangers humans, because he told them that at a birthday party in like 2015. So then he funds the startup of this to try to counter it. But at the same time, he keeps telling Sam Altman, Elon does, you've got to raise billions, not just millions. This is going to cost billions. And he drives Sam Altman into the arms of Microsoft, the company he wanted to block by starting this OpenAI. And then the opposite outcome comes out, because in part he told the guy you need billions. And so he sold half of the company basically to Microsoft for $19 billion.
I've been thinking about this concept for quite a few years, well before I read your book, and I never heard anybody talk about it before until you did, because I've noticed this too in my own personal life and just looking at the world. It seems like usually the most ridiculous thing actually happens.
Yes. And it seems to be happening more and more now than it did 10 years ago. Yeah. It's just so outrageous.
Hey, if I can get off the subject of Elon for just a second, what do you think of this whole AI thing? My general thing about this is that I do not think it's going to kill humans. I don't think it's going to end the world, but I do think it's going to put an enormous number of people out of work.
So I do think that there is a very big threat there, because if Elon Musk, one of the most brilliant people around, has been worrying about this for 10 years, then the threat is real. But spotting that and doing something about it is now possible, because Elon, I read one tweet that said he must be going through the simulation for the 4th time. He's getting so many things right. So that's one thought on AI. Second, I think that stock market, the U.S. economy, are going to have a multiplier effect from AI that no one has even assessed yet. It is incredible what will be happening. Okay. Look at the mere difference between going on Google to do a search. I want to search this topic, and you get this shopping list, a whole bunch of links that you now have to go and read and study, versus going to Grok and saying, and it looks at those same links, and then it gives you the finished meal. It's just, and so we're just seeing the start of it. But I have a longer range thing that I swear, save this, it's going to be brilliant one day, because I've seen every tech revolution since the 80s, all right? I saw the personal computer suddenly, become a big deal, okay? I saw all these things. And when the internet came out, it didn't matter that you were selling dog food. if you were selling it with a .com, oh my gosh, it's the internet. And so all the stories we in the media did were about, and it's the internet. And then eventually it didn't matter that it's the internet. Is it good dog food or not? And so the internet disappeared. Then blockchain, it's blockchain. Everything's blockchain, blockchain. At some point, what does it do? And that's the thing. And so we're going to get to a point. Sorry, hang on.
It's all right.
We will get to a point where AI is so great and we're so used to it that we're no longer wowed by AI. We're wowed by a human who knows a lot of stuff. We're going to be, there's going to be a comeback of the human. Right now, there's 2 million surgeries a year in the US done by robot, okay? In one mode. But 90% of prostate surgeries are done by robot. Great. Well, in 1989, I had kidney surgery, and I had 2 surgeons with their hands like in my abdomen, okay, and rerouting pipes and stuff and kidneys. And the thought that with their human hands they were doing this amazed me then. And after robots take over, we're going to be even more amazed that a human can do that. Excuse me. Sorry.
It's all right. It's okay. What? I should talk now. All right. Because now I lost my train of thought. Talking about the fact that AI is going to fade into the background. And yeah, it will. But are you familiar with Ray Kurzweil? Are you familiar?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay. So no, he's come. The idea of the singularity is that there will be at some point, there will be no plateaus between technological innovation. He figures it's going to happen around 2040, 2050. It might even be a little sooner. But the thing is, when that happens, like what will be amazing? Nothing. It's basically kind of what you're talking about. I mean, we will.
But I heard a machine learning expert say at the Milken conference some years ago. He said, "Look, at some point." And that's probably where I'm stealing this AI observation I just gave you. He said, at some point, a robot will be able to play a Stradivarius violin perfectly and play Mozart. He said, that will no longer impress you. You will be amazed, though, when a fellow person, a fellow human being can do that on the violin.
Yeah.
And you can't. So,
of course, there's already plenty of
went out, and I think AI will just be an amazing boon for an awful lot of things. I mean, I bought UNG. It's just an ETF based on natural gas price because most of the U.S. electrical grid is natural gas, and AI requires huge amounts of electricity.
Yes, that's right. That's actually one of the
spin-offs you can buy and invest in if you think about it.
We talk about this show on the show on a regular basis. Yeah, the amount of electricity we're going to need in the future is just enormous, and people better start wrapping their mind around nuclear power again because it's the only way we're going to manage it.
Exactly. Small nuclear is the future. We have rare earth metals like crazy in this country, but they're unreachable because we have no electric infrastructure going there. Well, you could take a semi-tractor trailer truck with a, small nuclear and get out there and you're going to be able to mine out there. And that's coming in the next 5 to 10 years. There's some companies doing that right now.
Well, they're already doing it. That's right. That's what they call modular nuclear reactors. They've been on a semi-trailer. They cost about $1 million, But you make enough of those things, you can take them anywhere or plug them into anything.
Right.
Yeah. Dennis?
Yes.
It's been a pleasure.
Yes, it has. Good. Thank you so much.
Before you go, is there anything else you want to touch on here? It's like,
well, they can find me at Dennis Kneale, KNEALE on X. That is my chosen platform. And, you can buy the book, The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million. And please put up a good, nice review in my area there because I'm getting some Elon haters that are hurting my ratings.
Yeah, I will do that, and we'll post all this stuff on our show blog too, so people have links to directly get your book. So I've enjoyed this immensely. I hope you'll be willing to come back sometime. I really do.
I would be dying to. Yeah, please come on my podcast, What's Bugging Me, and tell us what's bugging you.
Oh, no, I'm love to do that if you're really inviting me. That'd be fantastic. Yeah. We'll talk. Great. You take care, all right?
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, all. I want to talk to you about Conk News. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but if you're a news junkie, you should try this out. Conk News is a news aggregator. Now, there are plenty of news aggregators on the web, but Conk News is different than all the rest, and here's how. Most other news aggregators will lump the top stories from each news source under that news source. The top 10 stories, like, for example, from Fox News, Breitbart, the New York Post, etc. What Conk News does is it sends its servers out onto the web to over 75 different news sources every 3 hours. And yes, this is an automated process, but in this case, that's actually a good thing. And collects the latest stories from said 75 sources and then lays them out on its own front page in the order they were posted, regardless of the source. So you see the latest stories at the top of the front page, regardless of where they're from. And this is all free to you. You don't need to log in. You don't need to subscribe, register, nothing. It's completely free. All you have to do is go to conk.com to check it out. That's conk.com, 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 Conk News. Our thanks to Dennis Kneel there, the author of The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk. We'll put a link in our blog at jimandnight.com to his book and to his Twitter feed. That was really fascinating. He seems like a really cool guy. And I'd love to go on his podcast. So, and I generally don't do a lot of podcasts. I do not do the majority of the ones I'm invited on, but his I would go on. That was pretty cool. All right, so it's part 2 of our show. And if you've watched the show before, this is a part where it's kind of sort of like a newscast. And so we don't talk about anything that's major in the news. Usually it's like UFO stuff, media stuff, the stuff that the news doesn't report. And also, I want to point this out. I forgot to bring this up at the top of the show. We're not taking phone calls tonight. We are tomorrow night. Tomorrow night, we're going to take phone calls. So we'll have the ticker on the bottom of the screen with the telephone number. I'm not going to mention it now. Well, no, you can call in. What am I talking about? 325-CALL-JIM, 325-225-5546, and you can leave a message. If we're not on the air, you can leave a message. You have 2 minutes to leave a message at that number, and I'd appreciate it if you did. And if it's particularly entertaining, I will play it on the show here. And I got it. So the first thing I got here, and this is kind of sad because I tried to grab the video. There's a video of this that's on YouTube, and for whatever reason, I couldn't grab it today. I don't know what was going on, but it would not download. So I don't know if you guys know this. You can download videos from YouTube, but you need an intermediary program to do that, and I have one, but for some reason it wasn't working. So, and I think it was the connection. I think it was something with YouTube, just the way it was acting. At any rate, in China, there's a video of in a factory. There's a humanoid robot, like humanoid that looks like a human, right? So arms, legs, that sort of thing, and it has to do regular, physical labor, and it freaks out, and it starts throwing stuff and flailing all over the place, and the thing is, if you see the video, it's amazing how much it looks like a human freaking out. That's the thing that's really, this is not like, the robot does not seem to go on some sort of like random quest. It actually starts grabbing shit and throwing it. And it's like a human having a mental breakdown or emotional breakdown. That's kind of what it looks like, and that's what happened. And finally, they were able to, for lack of a better term, seize the robot. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't. We've had Brian Trilly on this show. He wrote the book Soulless Intelligence, and his claim, and I agree with him totally, and that is that he's making a distinct difference in artificial intelligence, which Dennis was just talking about, between intelligence and like soul. And he says, yes, the artificial intelligence is going to be way smarter than humans, but it's never going to have a soul ever. And the thing is, then you get to how do you define a soul, that sort of thing, and this gets back to what Dennis was talking about the fact that this might all be a simulation. And that may be true. And the one evidence that I personally, that I look toward that is that I don't know if you've ever noticed, it seems like the universe is designed for us to figure it out. Like, okay, so, we have physics, we have Newtonian physics, we understand atoms and all this sort of stuff. And then this thing called quantum physics is discovered, and it sends Newtonian physics completely on its head. And for example, this is my argument of my friends who tell me all the time. Like, I have a friend who says, of course there's other extraterrestrial civilizations because mathematically they would have to exist, but they're not coming here because you can't travel faster than the speed of light. Well, we already know how to travel faster than the speed of light. This doesn't get a lot of press, but we know how to do it. Why can't we do it? It would take, for even a small spacecraft that holds only 2 people, it would take more electricity than is generated on the entire planet. We don't have the resources, the energy resources to do it. And this is exactly what Dennis was talking about the fact with artificial intelligence. The average question, if you like ask a question to Chat GTP or Copilot, that process takes 5 times more electricity than doing a regular web search. And so you're right. So Dennis is absolutely right. The difference is when you do a web search, you get a list of web pages. When you ask the artificial intelligence, you actually get an answer to your question typed out. So what basically is called a large language model, what the AI does is it instantly reads billions of web pages looking for the answer to your question, finds the web pages that have what it thinks are the answer, and then summarizes it and puts on the screen. This all happens in a fraction of a second. And the reason that takes so much electricity is because you're not only just finding web pages, you're summarizing them on the fly. It takes 5 times more energy than doing a regular web search. The other thing is, for a web search, actually, I don't know the answer to this question. I really don't. For a web search, like for example, Google, and I think Bing does the same thing, they'd have to. They basically make a mirror of the popular internet on their servers. So in other words, they don't actually go out on the internet because you never know what's going to be down or how the internet connection is going to, how robust it's going to be, that sort of thing. They spider the internet and go to all the web pages and grab a copy, or at least a functional copy of every one, and then searches the copies. So you're talking about like the server data farm for like a Google web search is absolutely enormous because it's literally saving. It's not the entire internet. Matter of fact, it's only a portion because the vast majority of people only go to a small portion of the World Wide Web. So that's the part they save. If you want something really, really obscure, then it will go out on the actual internet and find it. But all these things are saved on their servers. Now, I don't know if they do the same thing to search for the answers for AI too. I assume they'd have to because that's the only way they could do it that fast. But at any rate, what was my point here? Do I know? It's like, no, well, it's yeah. Oh, the electricity involved, or the fact that we can't travel faster than the speed of light. No, we know how to do that. We do. It's like we know how to do it, and that's the thing. All this stuff has been discovered in like the last 30, 40 years. So, getting back to what Dennis was talking about earlier about the fact that everything seems to happen in 10,000-year chunks, and I've said this before. ET is visiting Earth, and at this point, don't even bother to argue with me that. I think that's for certain. Now, where they're coming from, what they're doing, I have no idea, and I can only speculate. But the fact they're coming here, that's for sure at this point. It's just like last night we were talking to Robert Tannenbaum about the JFK assassination. At this point, we have enough evidence to definitively conclude that there was more than one shooter in Dealey Plaza. Now, the subtitle to Tannenbaum's book is Why Lee Harvey Oswald Did Not Kill JFK. And I pressed him on this if you watched it, because he didn't really have an answer to this, and I don't really either. But it really, what the implication of his subtitle is, why Lee Harvey Oswald did not kill JFK alone, because he may have been one of the shooters. And the things we don't know, I've said I buy the story of James Files, the Chicago mobster who said he actually fired the shot that actually killed Kennedy, that blew his head up. And Files said they had a guy in the Daltex building and they had a guy in the Texas Book Suppository, but he knew who the guy in the Daltex building was. He did not know who was shooting from the Texas School Book Suppository, and it may or may not have been Oswald, even though we know for a fact Oswald was in the building. That's verified. We know that for sure. And he worked there, but that's not even the reason we know that he was there. He was seen in the second floor break room about 60 seconds after the shots were fired, which is a reason. There's more evidence to indicate he didn't do the shooting than he did, but he was there. And also, according to files, he was involved. And as Tannenbaum, confirmed last night, we know now for a fact he was a CIA operative. That's confirmed. That's verified publicly. So we know that too. So we don't actually know if he was in the window shooting. We don't, and like I said, there's more evidence to indicate he wasn't than he was. There seems to be some indication that every shooter had an assistant with them. And well, the thing is, he couldn't have been the assistant either. The real question is, like numerous people, and Tannenbaum talked about this, but the fact that they interviewed these witnesses. Numerous people saw him in the break room, not exactly while the shooting was happening, but about 1 minute after. And it takes a minute to run hell-bent from the 6th floor down the stairs to the 2nd floor break room. And also, there's some guy, and I can't remember his name, who spent like 19 years researching exactly who was in the stairwell when those shots went off. And he said all the people he talked to, he thinks he's talked now to every single person that was in the stairwell during the shooting. No one saw Oswald in the stairwell. So anyway, so now why am I bringing this all up? Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I'm just rambling here. Jesus Christ, Jim. Anyway, so we know that God. Yeah, this is good. Yeah, you're rambling. I'm talking about robots freaking out, and the fact that we don't have enough electricity. Okay. Oh, this was my point. Now I remember. Okay, if ET's coming here, and I've said this before, I just going in a big circle. This was my point. We have extraterrestrial civilizations visiting Earth anywhere from 200 to 2 million years ahead of us. And like Dennis said, if you think in 2 or 3 years we're going to have completely photographic video games, and they almost are right now, what happens if you have 10,000 years to do that? Huh? What happens? Now, people who've been abducted by aliens say this is a common thing, that they have the ability, the aliens literally drag them through the walls of their house to the spacecraft. So, and people say it feels like going through jelly, And the thing is, and that may sound like impossible, but it was Arthur Clarke who said that all misunderstood technology is magic, and it is. You think about this. You can see through a window. Now, of course, you never think about this because it's completely ordinary to you. But the window is a solid object, and you can see through it. And you can't see through all solid objects. And that means photons are going through the window. That's how you can see through the window. Well, what if it was not just photons? What if it was like everything? And what if you could manipulate atoms to do that? So you could change the spacing between the electrons and the proton and the nucleus, so that you could like pass through. It's really not. If you stop and think about it as a concept, it's not that far fetched. It isn't. Can we do that? Not even close. We don't know how to do that. We don't have we don't have a clue. We don't. Just like right now, we take atoms, elements, the periodic table, we combine them into molecules, we make all sorts of stuff. We make steel, we make drugs, we can make all sorts of solid and liquid objects by combining atoms. Well, what if you could combine the parts of the atoms and actually make atoms themselves? We can't do that. I don't think anyone's ever even tried. We can't do it. But someday we're going to be able to do that. I've said this on the show before too. For example, that replicator device they use on Star Trek The Next Generation. Captain Picard wants Earl Grey tea hot, and the microwave just makes a cup of tea. It just puts it together right there. It's basically an atomic printer. We have 3D printers right now. They can use all sorts of stuff. Matter of fact, General Electric now makes all their jet engines for commercial aircraft entirely in a giant 3D printer. The thing's huge, and literally there's no human touches this. They literally just make the thing. They feed metal into the printer, a liquid metal, and it makes the damn engine. So okay, we can do that with a giant engine. What if you could do that on a molecular basis, right? That's what that machine is. We're going to have that in 200 years, and it will completely change. Not only it's not going to change society so much as this will. It will change economics, because at that point scarcity will be over. So we will be able to make items the same way right now we can duplicate electronic files on your computer or your cell phone. We can, like if you have your copy of Bad Romance by Lady Gaga, you can duplicate that exactly and send it to somebody else. What if you could duplicate your ottoman chair? What if you could do that? And I'm guessing it'll be just like it is on that show. Every house will have a microwave-sized device that does this. And then if you want some big item, you go down to the city hall, and they have a giant one in a garage. It's going to be the same thing. You want a new car? And of course, by that time, our car's going to fly. Cars are going to fly now. I mean, I just saw a thing in Popular Science just today. I mean, we're going to have flying cars on the market within 12 to 18 months. That's going to happen. Finally, I'm pushing 70. Yeah. And when I was growing up, it was the Jetsons. When are we going to have that? Oh, 20 years. Bullshit. It didn't happen. We didn't even come close. No flying cars. Now we're finally going to have flying cars, and that'll be a mess. You think the Newark airport's bad right now? Oh my God. Wait till you get on I-35 down to Dallas with your flying car. Wait till you do that. Oh my God. Well, I tell you what, I had another story I was going to do tonight, and I put it in the description for the show on the billboards on social. And I'm not going to do it because it occurred to me after I did it. I said, well, this is the perfect topic for Conway tomorrow. So I'm not even going to mention what it is. You can read the descriptions if you want to hear it. But Conway, who made his teeth on quasi porn, will love that. And so I'm going to save that for tomorrow. And so tomorrow we're taking phone calls tomorrow night too. We're going to do that. So you can call in. And as I said, I'm hoping that before July 4th, we will have not only tomorrow, we should be on YouTube for the first time, or no, not YouTube, TikTok for the first time, at Jim at Night. Same thing. That's the same way. We're Jim at Night on all social media, except Facebook, where we were Jim at Night, and then they pulled our page down. And now I'm going to try to put it up again, and I'm going to see if I'm guessing. This is what I'm guessing, that even if they won't let me have Jim at Night again. So I'll see. We'll see. It's like dealing with these people. Pulling my hair out, and I don't even know why they canned us. My guess is because we've done a few shows with what the press likes to call climate change deniers. Because as soon as we put Patrick Moore on, that whole thing just blew up. And he's like the former founder of Greenpeace, who now doesn't believe in human caused climate change. And he's a climatologist by profession. That's what he did. And that's still the most watched episode of the show ever. And that was over a year ago. And we put that show up, and man, all hell broke loose. So we got flagged by YouTube, and YouTube's shadow banning us as far as I can tell. So they don't make any announcement or anything like that, but we are not getting out of our little prison there. And Facebook pulled our page down and never told me why. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's why we're at Jim at Night on TikTok. So I think we have 2 videos there now. I'm going to try to post 2 to 4 videos from every show that we have a guest on, which is almost all of them. Occasionally I do a solo show. If this is your first time you're watching this, I occasionally do. I'm trying to do less and less because I think the guests are more interesting, and that's what I'm good at. I'm good at talking to them. So anyway, yeah, Tim Conway's coming on tomorrow night. Matthew Willicke on Thursday, and he's a climatologist, so we'll talk to him about that too. And once again, the same thing might happen. Who the frick knows? I don't know. Anyway, I want to thank you folks for watching. I want to thank Dennis Kneale for coming on here. It was fascinating discussion. It was great. We'll have his links up on our blog. And this is what's going to happen here, as far as I can tell. The videos on TikTok and the shorts on YouTube will be posted one day late. In other words, the shorts from tonight's interview will probably be posted on Thursday, not tomorrow, Wednesday. That's the best way we can do this because I'm only one person, folks. So I'm doing my best. So anyway, you can look for that. So anyway, yeah, tomorrow Tim Conaway, former executive editor of Hustler magazine, is coming on, and he always has great things to say mostly about Trump, who he doesn't like, and journalism, that he's an expert at. So we're looking forward to that. He's always interesting. I want to thank you folks for watching very much. Good night, Uncle Donnie, wherever you are. And good night to you, wherever you may be. We'll see you tomorrow night, everybody. Take care.